Right, thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. Welcome. IT's employer councils, which comprise the Consultants Council, the Industry Council, and the Public Agency Council, are joining forces and hosting this joint virtual town hall to brainstorm with the larger IT community on the important topic of staff recruiting and retention. My name is Amir Razavi, and I'm the immediate past chair of the Consultants Council and chair of the planning committee for this event. I'm a principal with VHB and also serve as a director of transportation systems for VHB's New York City office. Before we get into our topic of discussion, I'd like to share how we selected this important topic, this important issue facing our industry today. So the Consultants Council was planning its town hall and had conducted a survey of its member firms to identify a suitable topic for discussion. And it became pretty evident that staff leaving the consulting industry was a real and critical issue that we needed to understand, that we needed to confront, and needed to try and find a solution to this problem. Meanwhile, elsewhere in IT land, the Public Agency Council and the Industry Council independently were identifying topics for their respective town hall meetings, similar to the Consultants Council. And similar to the Consultants Council, they identified that staff recruitment and retention are their immediate concern as well. So IT brought all three employer councils together so that we could collectively engage the larger IT community in discussing this matter. This is what led to the creation of this joint town hall. Now, we've all been there, working hard to train and mentor staff, only to find them leave a few years later. Sometimes for a better work-life balance, sometimes for a better pay, sometimes just for a different industry altogether. Managing the myriad of workforce issues, from the Great Resignation to new COVID work policies to the hybrid work environment and others, staff leaving the industry seems to be the biggest issue in today's world for employers. We've identified panelists who bring forth multiple perspectives. The planning committee felt that it would be beneficial to seek perspectives from our partners in human resources and recruiting to understand what they hear from their employees. In addition, our panelists include individuals who have made career moves from the public sector to the private sector and vice versa, and we'll get to hear their viewpoints as well. We want this town hall to serve as a platform for all of us to come together, share thoughts and ideas on relevant topics in the industry. We want this to be a forum that could lend itself to open feedback, and to that end, we will have breakout sessions led by moderators from the three councils after the panelists speak. This would enable participants to interact in these breakout sessions, identify potential ideas and solutions, address challenges, and share information on available resources. This is our goal for today's town hall. As you can imagine, I would also add that events like this take a lot of planning and coordination. So I would like to thank our planning committee that was instrumental in creating this event and pulling this event together. Kathy Driggs, Colleen Agan, and Pam Goodell from ITE, Ken Ackred from Kimley Hahn, Eric Ostenchuk from Traffic Planning and Design, James Carr from TechniQuest, Ian Barnes from Fair and Peers, Karen Robles from the village of Schaumburg, and Gary Carlin with Enrix. Thanks to ITE Stephen Bird for ensuring a smooth run on the technical side of things. Thank you to our audience, to you all, for taking the time to attend, and we look forward to your active participation. And of course, I'd like to express sincere gratitude to our panelists and moderators for their valuable time and insights. At this point, I would like to introduce our panelists for today in the order in which they will be speaking. So first up will be Barry Barber. Barry is the chairman of the board of Kimley Hahn, and prior to becoming chairman in 2021, he served as the firm's director of human resources for 20 years. In addition to serving as the firm's chairman, Barry maintains responsibility for Kimley Hahn's recruiting activities. A graduate of Wake Forest University, Barry is actively involved as a board member for numerous professional and not-for-profit organizations and is a past recipient of ACEC's Community Service Award. He's also a frequent speaker to professional and university groups. Prior to joining Kimberly Hahn in '94, Barry spent 9 years with the international consulting firm KPMG. Followed by Barry will be Faith Driggers. Faith Driggers is a Director of Human Resources for VHB's Mid-Atlantic region. She partners with leadership on strategic HR matters, providing direction and guidance on employee relationships, HR programs, and policies. Faith enjoys Faith enjoys facilitating training workshops and leadership development sessions, as well as coaching people leaders. She holds a BA in sociology from the University of South Carolina and a master's degree from Cornell in human resources management. Following Faith will be Neelam Darman. Neelam Darman is a planning manager for the Oregon Department of Transportation Region 1 in Portland, Oregon. She's a proud graduate of the University of California, Irvine, and is a registered engineer in Oregon and California. Neelam is a transportation planner and engineer with a background as a consultant and also with the city agency. Neelam is an experienced project manager on traffic impact studies, corridor studies, regional transportation plans, signal synchronization projects, site circulation access management, and project feasibility studies. She's worked closely with private developers, cities, counties, MPOs, and state transportation departments and authorities on complex and politically sensitive projects. Neelam is an IT fellow and has served in various appointed and elected positions in ITE, currently serving as International Director representing the Western District. And our last speaker for today will be Colin Kinton. Colin is a Senior Project Manager at Traffic Planning and Design Incorporated, with more than 30 years experience in traffic engineering. Since joining Traffic Planning and Design in 2019, Colin's directed traffic engineering studies and signal designs in the Carolinas. He's a graduate of the University of Tennessee with both his bachelor's and master's degrees in civil engineering and engineering management, and is an IT fellow, previously serving as a Southern District IT president in 2007. Prior to joining Traffic Planning and Design, Colin was a transportation director for Beaufort County, South Carolina, where he led management of their signal system, transportation capital projects, and transportation planning. He initiated the county's first traffic signal shop and implemented a networking and centralized communication plan for over 75% of the signals throughout the county. And with that, I'd like to invite Barry to kick it off.
Well, thank you very much. And y'all, it's a great to have an opportunity to chat with y'all today. Let me start with just two things, just to kind of give some perspective to my comments. The first is that the work that we are all in, whether it's the consulting business, whether it's serving in the public sector, at the end of the day, everything we do is about people. It's really that simple. It's our people, it's their expertise, it's their service delivery. We're not in a place where there are patents or there's not a whole lot in the factory. There's not supply chain really beyond people. And so therefore, the firms with the best people, the organizations with the best people, and the best culture for treating people well and going about their business will be the most successful. Real simple concept, but it's critical. Number two, we are in a talent war, and we will be for the foreseeable future. We all know it. There is more work to be done in the industry than there are qualified people to do it. From one perspective, that's great for you because it means job prospects are strong. It's also great for our firms because it means our services are going to be in demand. But the unfortunate reality is there's no reason to believe this is going to get better anytime soon. In fact, I believe, and I think many of us believe, that it's actually going to get more severe. And so that's what makes the topic of recruiting and retention just incredibly apropos. We can talk about the factors that might cause more people to join the industry. That we could be hours and hours on that. And so what I've tried to do with my comments is to really more focus on individual organizations and what they can do, and could talk for hours on it. I only have a few minutes, and so I'm going to try to be kind of simple and focused. When it comes to the retention of staff and frankly, the recruiting as well, the key is to develop loyal employees. Loyal employees are the ones who stay. They're also the ones that help to recruit and retain other loyal employees. My first job out of school, we mentioned earlier, I was there 9 years. I was treated reasonably well. In those 9 years, I worked hard. I think I did a pretty good job. I almost left once for grad school. I seriously entertained 3 other job opportunities before I ultimately left. I never truly consider myself a lifer. So as a result, I was never really invested in the long-term success of the firm. While think I was a pretty good employee, the reality is I was never really loyal. I was never really committed. In contrast, I joined Kimley-Horn in 1994. Other than the fact it means I'm old, I've been there a long time, been here a long time. And from the beginning, I felt like this was a place I could spend my career, and I have. And I've never once considered leaving for another opportunity. I've been very loyal to the firm. The firm's been good to me. And so what I want to do is I want to dig into the word loyalty. Where does it come from? Well, many years ago, I heard something from a friend that stuck. He says he picked it up from the Harvard Business School. I have no idea if that's true or not, but it sounds impressive. So I'm going to go with it. It's a very simple concept. People are loyal when they feel valued and when they receive value. So I'll say it again. People are loyal when they feel valued and they receive value. And so I want to kind of dig in on that sentence. And that's really what I'm going to do this morning. And so it's, as employers, it's what we need to focus on. I mean, feeling valued. And I realize that's a very subjective thing with a bunch of technical people that are on the phone, but it's real, right? People want to feel appreciated. They want to be more than number. They want to be more than just a body to get jobs done. They want to feel like a priority. If you're a new employee in an organization, you want to feel welcome. I mean, the reality is that people quickly kind of get a sense of a place within their first day, their weeks, the first couple months. Does this group really care about me, right? They want to feel like they're wanted. It's human nature. It's what we all want. We want to feel like we're making a difference. In a nutshell, we want to feel like we're valued. And so kind of my first question to all of us is, are the folks on my team, are the people in my firm, do they feel valued for who they are and for the contributions they make? If they don't, you can probably expect they're not going to be around a really, really long time. There's the second part, which is receiving value. People want to feel like they receive value. Now, part of that is financial, short-term elements like, are they getting a fair salary? Are they getting incentive comp to reward their performance and doing the extra things? In my former life, I did a lot of extra things. Most of them or many of them on my own time, and never once got a bonus. The only financial reward or differentiation I ever received, and I mean this literally, was someone told me that I got a 1% difference in my salary adjustment compared to what I would have gotten. Well, at the time I was making 60 grand, and 1% was $600, which after tax was $400. And maybe I can go out for a nice dinner on that, but that just didn't, after a while, I found myself saying, why bother? The other element of this has to do more longer term elements. If people need to feel like they're building financial security in order to be loyal to an employer. And just so we're clear, that means they're building their own financial security, not the owner of their firm or someone on Wall Street or someone, in the mayor's office or something along those lines. So that may be in the form of the way their retirement works. It may be with the way ownership works. So bottom line is, for someone to spend a career with an organization, they need to be confident, extremely confident, they can amass enough wealth and financial security to provide for their family's future. And receiving value is more than just financial. People need to feel like they're growing in their career, learning new skills, developing as a professional, growing as a leader. Let's face it, we want to hire and retain talented people. And talented people don't want to be stagnant in their career. They want to be moving forward. That's a huge part of employees feeling like they receive value. And so again, kind of that second question, are the folks in my organization, do they feel like they're receiving value? Are they moving ahead in the ways that they want to move ahead? If they are, and they feel valued, there's a good chance that they're growing in loyalty. And as they grow in loyalty, there's more likely that they'll be retained. Now, it's easy to think about this stuff as kind of, that's their responsibility. It's true that leadership in firms control the purse strings and set the pace in many ways. And if you're in leadership in your firm, endeavor to do the right things to build loyalty in your staff. But even if you're not, you can still make a huge difference. Challenge the leadership to do the right things to enhance the workplace. It's good business to be a great place to work. But the other thing is make your team a great place to work. You can't control everything, particularly some of the financial stuff, but you can invest in people to make them feel valued and to grow in their career. I spend a lot of time recruiting. I've had many conversations with people who say something to the effect of, my firm stinks, but I'm really loyal to my boss. I certainly hope that those of us on this phone, if we're attending a session like this, it means we're probably a bit more dialed into these topics than many other people. But I really hope that you kind of think in terms of, how can I make my team a place where people feel valued and receive value? I certainly hope your firm doesn't stink, and I'm sure most of us, our firms don't, but try to be the kind of people that folks are loyal to. And let me wrap up just a few thoughts related to recruiting. I would encourage you to think about using these concepts I've just described during the recruiting process. Help potential recruits see they will be valued and receive value at your firm. Be specific. Everybody can sell platitudes. Tell people, give people examples. In our situation, we can tell recruits about the year-long integration program they'll participate in. When we recruit college students, we can lay out a 5+ year technical and consulting skills training they'll receive. We can provide financial projections for what incentive comp and retirement contributions are going to like. We can lay out a path to ownership. I mean, those are the kinds of things we do, and each of our organizations can make similar pitches that help people understand how they're going to receive value for doing work for your organization. The second comment related to recruiting is to recruit for well-rounded professionals, not just technical studs who can get the job done. Think about my earlier comments. What kind of people are going to create the type of environment that people are going to want to work in, they're going to feel valued and receive value? It's going to be well-rounded folks. So recruit with that mindset. So y'all, my time is up. I need to stop. And I could and sometimes did go on for hours with these topics, but thanks for your attention. If anybody wants to follow up on any of these topics, feel free to reach out. I always love to engage on them. And with that, I will shut up and hand the baton over to Faith. So thank you.
Thanks, Barry. I appreciate that introduction. And it sounds like a couple of the key themes that I heard from you were value and loyalty, which are some of the things that I'm going to be hitting on as well. So I'm really excited to be speaking with this group today around this topic that is truly top of mind for so many of us. Just for a little bit of context, I'm representing VHB, and we have approximately 1,800 employees, over 30 offices across the East Coast. And so while I represent that size of a firm, I'm going to really be hitting on things that firms of any size can do. And that's going to be the strategy that we go with for today. So we'll hit on a few of these areas, starting with state of the industry and then going into some core areas of focus, and then finally landing with some high return practices. So I imagine that if I asked each of you what's top of mind for your company, you'd mention things like turnover, recruitment, potentially hybrid challenges, retention, maybe engagement, perhaps some potential impacts that may be looming due to the recession. that we keep hearing about. And so for our time together today, what I'd really like to do is to challenge you to consider how each of these different pieces may be impacting your employees or your team or the team that you represent, and to really think about it from that perspective instead of the lens of your firm or your specific role. And so I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about why firms in our industry are struggling with both recruitment and retention. So let's unpack this just a little bit more. Employees, and some of this is things that Barry mentioned as well, so just picking up on that, employees continue to hold most of the bargaining power in this tight labor market. And so that, of course, is going to contribute to some of the issues around recruitment that we're seeing. The second piece that I wanted to touch on is that while voluntary turnover increased in this year, we've seen an uptick of about 13%. Involuntary turnover continues to drop. So right now we're at just under 3%. And so I mentioned that specifically because this may lead to managers and some teams being hesitant to address issues or provide real-time feedback because they want to hold on to their people. So we'll talk a little bit about how we can dive in on that and ensure that we are giving our teams the right amount of feedback. And finally, this concept that the grass is greener, that employees tend to leave to work for competitors, and that they're looking for higher salaries. And right now we can find salaries are being increased 2 to 3 times greater than historic norms, which again does underscore that grass is greener concept. So according to EFCG, our employees are leaving our firms to go to a variety of other employers. Many of us know this and have witnessed this. And so that includes competitors, clients, and some are just leaving the industry altogether, again, for those greener pastures in some cases, or the promise of that in any way. Today, we're really going to talk about why are employees going to those different groups. And so the data shows us that over 40% are leaving for a higher salary. And then a combined 20% are leaving for reasons of pursuing passions or better work-life balance. And so with this data, while the signs may point to higher salary and that being a true reason for people leaving, I'd like to push back on that a little bit and explore that a little bit further, because a lot of times salary isn't the major driver. It might be the final straw. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we can provide opportunities so that folks aren't leaving for those salary increases with another firm. Oh, excuse me. So what do we know? I want to draw your attention to a couple of areas here. One in particular, that 94% of employees say that they would stay at a company longer if it invested in their career development. And I think this goes back to that concept of value and loyalty that Barry touched on, that truly employees are looking for really understanding that their company cares about them long term. And additionally, that 54% of immediate retention is associated with the employee's belief that their company contributes to their development. So if we know those things, what do we do with them? At VHB, we've set the stage for what's happening in the industry, but I'd like to spend a little bit more time talking about how we are addressing these issues and provide some practical tips and ways that each of you may be able to take back to your firms. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm representing a firm of about 1,800, but we're going to really focus on some things that each of you can do regardless of the size of your firm or the size of your HR team. So a few areas that we're going to touch on are around career growth, learning and development, and employee experience. And I do have to give a little bit of a warning here. While I'm going to, spend a little bit of time talking about each of these, I don't have a silver bullet. I don't have a magic answer. I think we've got some really great strategies, but you're going to have to take these and assess whether or not they're going to work for your firm or your specific needs. But there really is no one-stop shop for how to fix these issues that we're all facing together. So around career growth, when thinking about potential reasons that an employee may want to leave or that your employers or coworkers have potentially left, one that really tops the list is this idea of career growth and development. And so we're really encourage you to take time to invest in understanding the future that your employees want and what they're looking for. A couple of things that we've done and that we're working on in particular would be around career pathing. We have 3 different tracks that speak to not only individuals who are looking to be experts in the technical area, but then also PM development, as well as a leadership track. And so again, we're building out those resources and certainly would encourage you to talk to your employee about the path that they may have at your particular firm. And the other piece that I wanted to mention around career growth is this concept of career conversations. And so this is really a critical conversation between an employee and their manager. And this is where you would check in on your goals, your career path, really particular to the individual employee, so very much tailored to them. We do it formally 2 times a year, but it's really designed to be a conversation that lives throughout the year. And again, my encouragement there is that that you would partner with your employee or your manager, depending on where you are in your organization, to really outline what your plan is and what you'd like to do in terms of your career, so that your manager can help you with achieving that. In terms of learning and development, we have several different things that we're doing at BHB, and one thing that I would encourage each of you to think about are the lunch and learns and pulling your employees in on those. And those can be breakfast or lunch types of sessions, but really getting more granular into why a certain employee should join a lunch and learn, or why you think it may be impactful, such that they understand that you are a partner with them in their journey to whatever it is that they're looking to accomplish in their career. So around the employee experience side of the house, we do a few things that many of your firms may do something similar. We recognize tenure with what we call milestone celebrations, and you can see some photos of those there on the side. We also have an internal program called Rise Awards, where we recognize projects, and then we'll provide opportunities for individuals that were on those project teams to share what it was that made that project a hit. So, again, lunch and learn or breakfast type sessions. But again, under this recognition of under this umbrella of recognition, we do have an employee experience team, and are really focusing on the experience overall. One thing that I'd like to point out is that we do have the Spot Award program, which is a way to say thank you with a monetary bonus in the form of a gift card, which is something that, again, any firm could consider doing. An additional reminder for this group is that recognition can come in so many different forms. And if you don't have an earmarked budget, or maybe if your budget isn't as large as you'd like to be for something like this, I think that's totally okay. You can recognize your team in so many ways that cost nothing. Sometimes it's one of the most underutilized tools that we have. And so understanding how it is that your employees like to be recognized, and then just making sure that you do those kinds of things, whether it's a shout out in a meeting, a phone call, thanking someone for what they did on a project or extra efforts. Don't underestimate the value of a handwritten note, putting a stamp in the mail, that kind of thing. But this is a wonderful tool that we all have, and you could use right away. So what do we do next? I'd like to share just a few, as we're wrapping up, a few high return practices that could be helpful for you and your firms. One in particular, and again, Barry hit on this as well, is really revisiting salary, making sure that your teams are paid competitively, and advocating to have that happen. I can speak to VHB. We've done 3 adjustments in the past 18 months to just ensure that we're paying, again, competitively and at market. And we communicated around those, which is another piece that I would encourage, is to just make sure that when you're looking at salary or when you're revisiting those pieces, that your employees know that you're paying attention to that. And then we'll talk a little bit about increased communication before we wrap up with learning and development opportunities. So around communication, I highly recommend, again, with that career conversation concept, having regular one-on-ones with your employees. And so building that relationship with your team, with your manager, and just making sure that you nurture that. One of the things that I like to say is that, take care of your team at a heightened level than you would your client. Just really make sure that you're spending that time to understand what's going on in people's lives and what they may be challenged with, so that you can partner with them on that. And then finally, also just checking for an understanding of where the company vision fits into an employee's individual career goals. Again, just making sure that there's clarity there and that there's alignment, and having those one-on-one conversations is a great place to do that. And then finally, on learning and development, I highly recommend providing experiences under the learning and development umbrella that will be impactful and meaningful to your team. And this is something that you can do regardless of your size. The career path may look different for different folks on your team, but really would underscore that knowing what your employees want and they're looking for out of their career, and being a true partner to them to help them achieve their goals. And again, it doesn't always have to be elaborate. It could be pulling folks in on the job training and learning, and tying that back to your understanding of what they want to do as a next step. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. I'm going to hand it over to Neelam to share next.
Great, thank you, Faith. I will assume that you all can hear me unless I see something otherwise in the chat. I'm going to actually provide the switch from an employer perspective and to an individual experience, and particularly my experience. I will start with my general background and then talk a little bit about the decisions I made to move to the public sector. I am not seeing myself pop up on camera, so I'll just ask ITE staff if you're able to hear me and if everything's working well.
We can see you, Neelam.
Perfect, thank you. So my education is in civil engineering. I have just over 15 years of experience, most of which was in the private sector. My work experience falls mostly into the realm of planning and operations. I've had the opportunity to work for small, medium, and large firms, as well as a medium-sized city before I started here over at Oregon DOT. I did recently actually move to this market. I moved from California, where I had built my career, to Oregon this past year. My choice was definitely personal to make the move, but it did open up a lot of opportunities for me. And it also did mean that I had to leave my city job back in California. I did the move to Oregon and into a new firm during pandemic operations, which definitely affected my onboarding and also engagement with the firm I transferred with. To provide a little personal context, which affects my career choices, I consider myself a driven person, and I'm willing to step outside my comfort zone if a great opportunity comes in front of me. I know building a family affects career trajectory, so I will say I personally don't have children. However, I think my career milestones and choices still track along with your notable typical life and age trajectory. For my public experience, I stepped into the public realm with about 12 years of experience in the private sector, and I actually strategically picked this career change. I picked a city that had the financial opportunity and internal staffing to do innovative projects that experienced some unique challenges and would give me staff level experience in a very political environment. Of course, the people matter anywhere you work, and I did get to do some research, and through my wonderful ITE relationships, get to know a little bit more about the public works director and the city traffic engineer that I'd be working for, and learn that they were great to work with, and most importantly, were good at protecting staff from as much of the politics as possible. My role was politically visible, but it's sort of a safer introduction into that realm for me, both in where I fell on the org chart and definitely with the folks that were upline from me and how they took care of their teams. I have really great mentors, and their guidance on the benefits and opportunities of working in the public sector helped inform my choices. I was at a point in my career where the transition would occur in a more senior role. And for me, that meant more autonomy rather than starting fresh as a graduate in the public sector. I wanted the experience of working for an agency as I'd only worked in private, and it would help me inform my future career path. I knew the experience would be valuable. It wouldn't deter my career path in any way, whether or not I stayed in the public realm. Wanted to get the experience getting to develop a project and see how it was prioritized before coming out as RFP, where I touched it as a consultant. And also getting to see that project be moved through all the phases to implementation and opening day. I wanted to shepherd a project, working closely with the community throughout all the stages rather than being involved once it became a consultant-oriented project. And honestly, at that point in my career, I was looking for a smaller geographic area. I loved all the roles that I've had in the private sector and getting to work across multiple markets. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. It definitely made me a better agency resource. I did learn a lot and I built a lot of relationships across markets, but I think for my last role before I went to the city, the travel was a little much for me. This was definitely pre-COVID, so travel was a bigger deal for the role that I had. And I think the city also provided a little bit more of the typical 8 to 5 hours versus my private sector job at the time. My current role is a little bit more dynamic, definitely politically forward, but it still provides me, I think, a little bit more balance. I am new to this role. I haven't been there. I've only been there for about 3.5 months, but it still seems to track with a little bit more balance as far as hours worked. I chose to take this role on with Oregon DOT because it gave me an opportunity to work in policy and regional planning. My experience in the industry so far motivated me to get involved in the earlier parts of our work, which to me was helping set policy. The role also gives me a chance to lead a team and manage a department in a fairly traditional hierarchy and organization. Again, really positive experience for informing the rest of my career as I continue to build it. I will say I also wanted the title. In my experience, I missed seeing myself represented in leadership roles throughout the industry. So I went out for a more visible, higher management role to, show representation for myself and hopefully for others. I just have a couple of last thoughts. I wanted to keep this brief. I did want to highlight some of the perceived negatives about working for an agency and to some extent dispel them. So I transitioned from a large private firm to a DOT, and I did actually have to take a significant pay cut to do so. Definitely a difficult decision and process, especially for someone as detail-oriented me. There were many spreadsheets involved. But in the end, honestly, taking into account the DOT benefits package, and when you're calculating your salary offer at firm A and agency B, the way they administer their pension and 401k and all that, for me personally, the take home was pretty similar and the level of benefits was pretty similar. So even though on paper it's a salary cut, it still ended up being very similar once you accounted for all of the different benefits. I was also able to negotiate support for my commitments to ITE. I know there's also a perception that you can't do a lot of external training and volunteering when you're with an agency. It varies from agency to agency for sure, but I made a very deliberate case to my manager during the hiring process. And I will say it did help that some of my references for this job were also active ITE members, and they were able to echo these benefits to my manager. And as a manager, I am definitely using the limited tools that I have in my budget and ability to offer salary increases using training and industry involvement as much as I can as a motivator to and another benefit to be at an agency. As that agency hiring manager, I'll just say that we're experiencing very similar difficulties as echoed by the two presenters ahead of me that they're experiencing in the private sector. And we're competing with our consultants to make those good hires. Definitely seeing a lot of people switching from private to public, but also from public to private. So within my team, I traded with somebody else who went to the private sector within the same year. So it's definitely a lot of movement. One of the things that Oregon DOT is also facing is a large number of our workforce will be retiring in the next so many years. And that process has started, but it'll be a significant number of senior roles, people with a lot of institutional knowledge that we'll be trying to replace in the next 5 years or so. So it's definitely a challenge that we see on the agency side as well. I'll stop speaking here and I will hand it off to Colin.
All right. So hi, everyone. It's really great to see some familiar faces and names on the list today. And I'm amazed how many people we've got participating. Close to over 170, looks like. We'll try to be brief because I know we've got to move into some breakout rooms real quick. And so I'm representing the move from kind of opposite of Neelam, the move from the public sector into the private sector. And so I work for traffic planning and design, and we have about 250 employees along the East Coast. So in moving from the public sector to the consulting field, I will say it's not always about the money. You hear that a lot, that it's, that's why people make the move, but there's a lot of other reasons why. And several of my moves have actually been more lateral moves, and not necessarily with regards to pay increases, though the increase in pay is always nice. But as a background, so I started out in local city government, and after several years moved into consulting, and then spent several years in consulting, and then moved back into local government, and then 4 years ago came to work at TPD. So I've seen the perspective of going from private to public and public to private, with about 2/3 of my time in the public sector and a third in consulting. I do want to just kind of cover 3 areas in talking about the differences and reasons, and those are kind of the reasons for moving from one field to the other, some of the differences and observed between public and private work, and then some thoughts about attracting and retaining staff. So reasons for moving, when you see a lot of public people moving into the consulting field, and Neelam mentioned this earlier, that with the state retirement systems that many states have, there is a likelihood that employees will be retiring early from a state or local government and still have many years of work left into them, and will move into the private sector. That was not my situation. There's also opportunities for upward mobility and professional growth. And that can go both ways, whether someone sees an opportunity for enrichment and professional growth in a new opportunity, and that they're not seeing presently where they currently are. For me, a significant reason for my move was what I would call outside environmental factors involving kind of more geographical location and family. And when I look back on the 4 moves I've made in my career, they've all taken place at a kind of a milestone in my personal life. Going from being a single person to starting a family just happens to coincide with me with changing a job, and then beginning a family and raising kids brought me to a different position. And then now finally my children are about grown, and that brought in more opportunities. So not necessarily the same path as other people have made, but that's how it worked out with me and my family. So, but there's also, other issues that come into play. Sometimes the change in, what I would say, the change in the hierarchy and leadership of the organization somebody's at. In the public sector, it especially in smaller local governments, that could be a political change. And there could be the introduction of instability or increased political visibility for a position that may result in a change. Also changes in workflow pace and different, attraction of different job types. And then, a lot of people move from the private sector to the public sector because they have a public service mindset and want to work more closely with the public. Moving on, so there's differences that we see between public and private. Client management, because you have different types of clients. You are, if you're in the public sector, your client may be more related to the general public, whereas in the private sector, your client's going to be, the person that's paying the bill. You've got different issues with time management and budget management between the two. In public sector, you're not often looking at your timesheet and managing a project budget in the same way as you are in a consulting. You still have budget management on both, but there's a significant difference there. And then day-to-day scheduling, whether it's meetings, travel, and whether your position is involved putting out fires quite often. And then finally, project management. In the public sector, a project manager is often, is an owner manager type position, and has different goals and tasks and responsibilities in that area than in the consultant manager, who is managing a project in a different form and function. So, and then, so finally, I just want to kind of quickly wrap it up and talk about, how we attract and retain workforce. We need to keep in mind the variety of work that our staff do and that we are looking for. And work-life balance is indeed important. We hear that a lot now, people looking for better work-life balance in what they do. We need to remain flexible in how we attract and retain a workforce, and look for opportunities to encourage growth and advancement and professional growth. And we need to be able to recognize stressors in our staff and in ourselves, and be able to adapt to that. So that's kind of the quick for me, and I'll go ahead and wrap it up, and then we will, I think Karen is going to move us now into our breakout session. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Colin. And thank you to all of our speakers. I think this was a great introduction and different perspectives on kind of the staffing and staff retainment issues that we've all been experiencing. So next up, we are going to break all of you participants up into a number of smaller groups where we'll have moderators kind of leading the discussion. The goal here is to learn from each other. What's working? What are your organizations doing to address these staffing challenges? How are you as an individual contributing to those efforts? And so I really encourage all of you to turn your cameras on and participate, and will hopefully be a robust conversation for about the next 30 minutes. And so we will automatically assign you to your groups, and moderators, just a reminder to please record your discussions.